Good recording. Cool. All right. Have you done one of these before?
A podcast?
Yeah.
I don't think I have.
No.
I've only talked to the mic, and it's usually me hearing myself when I'm recording my own stuff.
Yeah.
But never like talking to another person.
That's why I asked, because I know that you do plenty of other stuff. So I figured maybe this is another one of those endeavors that it would be a surprise to other people to hear that you do.
No.
Well, that's good. Well, welcome to the podcasting world.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're not uncomfortable in front of the microphone, at least.
No, I'm not. No, I it's like my natural element.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen you around campus and talked to you about it. And even when we were at the Capitol for a DO day, we talked about it. I don't know where you find the time to do these things.
It's coming into med school is I've realized that the things that I really care about, I have been able to do more of that during med school because we have such limited amount of time to donate to the things that matter, whether that's family, friends, or extracurriculars. And for me, poetry is a huge portion of my life. And I may be saying words in a conversation with a person, but the complete extent of my emotions aren't transferred. So I have to be able to write them down in a prose. And so like making music is something that I've really focused on, working out, meal prepping, and then studying. Like that's all I do. I just go from the school to the apartments to the gym. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. There's probably some sort of a balance that comes along with it too. And just the sense that you couldn't do what you do in med school without the balance of the other things that seem like extracurricular activities that you shouldn't have time for.
Right. And they definitely kind of set us up to study all the time. But I feel like if I did that, I'd lose my sanity.
Yeah. Yeah. I know personally there's days for me where if I don't do something that before you do it, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. This is going to be awful. But if you don't do it, it seems like you lose motivation to do the other things throughout the course of the rest of the day. And I imagine with something as strenuous as med school, if you can't take time to do the things that are meaningful to you, even if they're tough to do, even if it's something like working out or, something strenuous, then you lose it's like a forward momentum sort of thing.
Getting into the whole grind of things. I at first it was like, okay, I have to get this done. And it was very like one track minded kind of objective. Okay, let's get all of this stuff done. That's on my checklist. And yeah, for a few weeks you continue to do that, but then you feel that burnout starting to like creep in the background. And then it hit me that this is not something I should be stressed over. Like, yeah, it's going to be stress in this, but this is like a lifestyle I'm just going to have to like evolve into.
Yeah.
And getting that perspective, it's a lifestyle. This is how I'm going to start living from now on. I'm going to have to be okay with that. Makes it a little more doable. Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of gives you almost a standard that you have to meet. And when you meet that standard, I imagine that there's some sort of a gratification that inspires the next day, kind of fuels it to keep it rolling forward.
Yeah. I always think ahead, and I've been primed to do that since I was a kid. My parents have always asked me, hey, okay, what's your next step? My dad and I have this relationship. He's always, okay, what's your next step? What are you going to do? How are you going to get there? And so I've always kind of like been primed to think what I'm supposed to do next. You go through middle school, high school, you do volunteering, and then you were like, okay, I'm gonna get into college, and then you have everything laid down for you. These are the classes you're gonna take. You got to take the standardized tests, and okay, now you're gonna have to do some actual work and get into med school. Getting into med school and actually living it day by day, living in the present is something I've learned while in med school, because we have exams almost every other day. We have quizzes almost every other day, and thinking about you would overwhelm yourself if you thought about what's going to happen tomorrow. Forget the day after tomorrow, and it's wild because I'm a planner, and this is something new, something that I'm trying to come to terms with. Yeah,
this has been a plan for a while, right? I remember when I was doing some background and trying to get a sense of where you come from and who you are. I read somewhere that you had been thinking of being a doctor since you were about 12 years old. Is that right?
Yeah. I was in Canada, and my uncle, he's an accountant there. So I have no doctors in my family. And we were watching this TV show where it was a Steven Spielberg TV show called Taken, I believe. And this guy was having his head cut open, and there was an alien parasite that crawled out. And at that point, I looked at that and I was like, oh my goodness, how can you do that to a person's head? Because we always wear helmets, we prevent, any injuries. And I'm like, here you are just cutting it open without without any fear. He told me, well, there are doctors who do that. They're called neurosurgeons. And at that point, something just kind of like latched onto the word neurosurgeon. And I've just been in love with the idea of what neurosurgery is. He said there's not many of them, and there's, they're in high demand. And I think I've always been the kind of person who goes against the grain. And if someone's doing something, I'm just going to go complete the opposite way and try to pursue what's not being pursued. And I started reading books about the brain. I remember in 5th grade, I got this book called The Rough Guide to the Brain by Barry J. Gibbs. And I read it page to page. And everything that I needed to know for my 7th grade curricula was in that book, because we just talked about the brain. And then I was way into sci-fi and technology, this whole idea of an organic piece of machinery that controls every part of us is the brain. So that kind of catalyzed my love for medicine and my passion for people. But at the end, I think it comes down to my passion for people. The medicine comes second.
What is it about people? It sounds like it's driven by curiosity, of course, but then when you get down to that human element and coming to a school like ours that has the unique mission that we do, I mean, there's a lot of different places that you could go to get the in-depth knowledge of whatever those fields may be, whether it's neurosurgery or anything else. But then connecting back to the people, were there early life experiences that led you in that direction?
Or my early life experiences, I've always been a very emotional person. I think. So I was sent to boarding school when I was super young, and I think a lot of my emotions were kind of like, I don't know, in disarray. And I've always been emotional and been able to empathize with people really easily and kind of see their point of view, feel sad when they're sad, feel happy when they're happy, and just being able to be on the same wavelength when I'm communicating with them really makes me feel happy. And seeing others happy, kind of cliche as it sounds, I feel like, okay, I'm doing something for them, and altruistically I feel good. And then my love for science just kind of catalyzed the idea that, okay, medicine is something that I could be good at, and I should give it a shot. And I've always had high expectations for myself, and sometimes that is a weakness as well as a strength.
Yeah, we recently did one. I mean, it's a tough topic to bring up because you bring so much passion and happiness to it, but we did a podcast on physician burnout, and we were having the same discussion about empathy with the guests that we had on there, and just the challenges of being in the healthcare field, where so many times the people that you're seeing are the people who are having the worst experience of their life at the moment. Have you thought about those challenges, especially being somebody who has that empathetic point of view where you can kind of tap into somebody else's emotions? If those emotions are, I'm really having a hard time right now, and I'm struggling, then odds are you're going to kind of sponge that up a bit.
I've definitely given that thought, and I'm super sentimental, super emotional. Some would say that I think more with my heart. I lead more with my heart than I do with my brain, and I think that's kind of one of the things that sets me apart. Coming to med school, it all comes back to med school, where I've learned a little bit more about myself each semester. There are exams that I don't pass, and at the end of the day, I mean, after that, I'm thinking to myself, this was terrible. I should have studied more. Maybe I didn't study the right stuff. And then, something dawns upon me, like this is not this happens. Like if I relate it to a patient, no matter how hard I can try, no matter how much information I know, how much effort I put in, even though I really want to, I might not be able to save every patient. And failing an exam, that is something that's a reality. And I have to be okay with that. And where we have things back to back. So compartmentalizing things is something I've also had to do. I can't just ruminate over certain things and just ponder about them. I have to bounce back and get back and on to the next one. Excuse my motto. Actually, one of my other mottos is you win some, you lose a lot. So
yeah, that's a good motto going into the healthcare field, unfortunately, because of the challenges that, I mean, it's a constant array of challenges that you're going to be facing, but I think that's the exact, you have to kind of be vulnerable, because if you're not, you're never going to connect with the patients in a way that's meaningful to them. And really, I think that's the most important part about giving somebody care, is showing them that you really do care for them.
Yeah. We the first 2 years are just clinical stuff. Like we're getting, clinical and classroom settings, we're getting so much information. And and we may lose ourselves in all of the process because we're just studying, losing that aspect of social life in our little bubble, kind of losing ourselves. And so at the end of the 2 years, I'm afraid that some of us may lose our sense of humanity. But being the emotional self that I am, I feel like I will always have that to guide me through. Like with all the medical knowledge that I'll accrue, I'll still care, because it's okay if I lose some. I just have a lot of it.
Yeah, that's a really good way to be. I think that people, when they get cold and when they start to dehumanize the patients that they're seeing, or even if it's not a patient in any life experience, I think that it's just a defense mechanism. It's trying to protect yourself.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like you're the type of person that would even have the ability to put up a wall like that.
No, I'm very transparent with everything. You could ask me anything, and I would reply back. Because, I mean, I feel like information should be out there for everyone. My experiences are not, I mean, yeah, they're my own experiences, but I have nothing to hide. Like I have everything to share. And with a patient, when we're in a room with them, it's confidential. It's a safe space. And everything that I could be thinking, I'll be transparent and honest with them, because that's something that I owe to them based on what I've learned.
Speaking of experiences, you brought up the boarding school thing, and that was another thing that I had read going into this, and I was fascinated by it. What was that experience like?
The thing that prompted my parents to send me to boarding school, so I was sent there when I was 6 years old.
Wow.
I was born in India when I was in Punjab, and so when I was 3 years old, my dad and my mom and I moved to Dallas, Texas, and they were working full time. My dad was getting into the restaurant management industry, and my mom was a cake decorator. So they were working full time, and I was just an out of control child. I was the first kid, the eldest, and I used to like take my tricycle at the age of 3 and block the main intersections of Garland, Texas, and I used to open the deadbolt with a chair, climb up, and then get out and take my bicycle to Walmart, look under someone's car. And on both of those occasions, the cops had to take me back home because, well, you have this weird kid roaming around Garland. You couldn't have that. So things built upon each other, and they were like, this kid is out of control. He needs to get disciplined. And that's kind of like one of the cultures that I'm from. So at the age of 6, they knew that this boarding school in India was private. It was great education. We had some family in the state next to it. He said, let's send him there. And we've heard great things about it. Why not? It was harrowing for me. I didn't exactly know what was going on, but I remember crying a lot. My mom left, and then I was there. I was crying for days on end. Like I was on the bed, and it was terrible. And fortunately, I had made some friends who were from California, and they kind of consoled me. And for the 9 months that I was in school, it was great. Like there was a lot of discipline, like in ways that prompted my parents to not send me there after 3 years. And I learned a lot. I became a better student, artist, orator, athlete. It was a beautiful place. So I came back home every 9 months for 3 months, and then went back. So, I didn't see my parents, and then I saw them. And then I had to leave after I, saw them. Then I had to not see them. So it was like this constant, like ripping the Band-Aid, bleeding, ripping the Band-Aid, bleeding. And at the time, like it was fine. I could, I was just getting used to it. But I think all of that manifested later on as I, got into college, and I was noticing the way I act with certain people, especially in relationships. And so coming to terms with that, realizing that, being aware of that, that's something that I have worked through a lot. So that's one aspect. But yes, it was hard.
Yeah, what a shaping experience. So it was from 6 to 9 years old?
6 to 9. And my sister was sent there my last year, and she got homesick. And then my parents, we were there, after my third grade. And they noticed red lashes on my chest. And then they were just horrified. They contacted the school's principal, and I was best friend with the school principal's, the headmaster's son. And so, they had a conversation. He was like, I had no idea this was going on. So after that point, my parents didn't send me back. Yeah, looking back, I am not upset that they sent me there, because I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be as disciplined or as independent. had I not been there. I may be a completely different person with a different perspective. I learned to read and write Hindi when I was over there, and that's something I still know how to do.
Wow.
So seeing various perspectives and being in a group of people who I'm not comfortable with, that has also been something that I'm good at now, and I think I owe it a lot. I owe a lot to that experience.
Yeah. All life experiences, good or bad, they inform the rest of our lives, and they create a perspective that we can use. If you're able to look at it in that way, you can use it as a tool to inform the way that you approach anything, really. So now that you're at medical, where do you live? Where's your family?
My parents are in Portland, Oregon. We moved from Dallas to Portland about 12 years ago. And my dad was working for his boss for the past 15, 20 years. And then the glass ceiling was too low. He decided he wanted to open his own restaurant. And so he opened one in Missouri. And he was going to take the whole family and move them to Missouri. But something shifted. And I think he's just remotely kind of managing that. So they're there. My grandparents live with us, my sister, my brother, and my mom, all in Portland.
Wow. Yeah. So now being out here in Yakima from Portland, you went to college in Oregon as well, right?
I went to University of Oregon.
So being out here in Yakima, from that entire family that's living in that one place, the whole experience, again, that must be something that's informing you to be able to deal with it for the family separation, and especially going through the stresses of something like medical school. It's
funny because ever since I was pretty young, I've been away from my family, and I understand. I don't feel, I mean, this may sound odd, but I love my family, but I've been primed to like be away from them since I was so young. It's not the same. I do like going back, but I'm not the same person that I am when I go back as opposed to when I am, with my friends here. And I've thought about that for a long time. When I'm home, I'm reserved, I'm quiet, I'm a little more intolerant, and I wondered, and only until a few months ago I realized why that was so.
Yeah, those experiences sounds like have created sort of an independence in you, but I think that's also something that's probably created that empathetic, that deep connection to emotions that you feel, and being able to connect with yourself, because you've been forced, it seems at many points, to rely on yourself more than to rely on others.
But my mom definitely misses me. I think she kind of regrets sending me to boarding school because I always bring it up to her. And she's like, why do you have to do that? I'm like, hey, it happened. Like, what can you do?
Yeah. So coming out of Oregon, coming out of college, what was the decision to go into medical school? I know that early on you had decided to be a doctor and you were fascinated by that.
Yeah.
But there's many things that when we're kids, we can, say, oh, I want to go into that because I saw it on a TV show. But to actually take the steps to make it a reality is a different thing altogether.
I wanted to be a Power Ranger. Like that was the first thing I wanted to do when I was super, super young, before I was 12. And then, then came Spider-Man, then came like a scientist, and any of the archaeologists, paleontologists, and physicians are a type of scientist. And so that kind of like was in that same vein. So coming out of college, my college experience was really interesting because I spent a lot of time studying, researching, and I had a little bit of a obstacle because of organic chemistry. And I was wondering, I didn't do well in the course. All in all, so in one sequence, there's three courses. You have OChem 1, 2, 3. And I've taken 7 organic chemistry classes in all. Just because I've taken one, then I realized I'm not good at it. Then I took the whole sequence, wasn't good at it. And then I took the first sequence again. The first course, realized I wasn't good at it. So I stopped. And it was my 3rd year that I realized, why am I letting this one sequence stand between my dream of wanting to be a physician as opposed to not? And the way I came to that realization was I asked myself, where do I see myself 30 or 40 years down the road? Do I want to be someone that has autonomy over the decisions that they make? And, who do I want to work for? And so I realized, I need to do it, because if I don't try, then I won't know. So that pushed my years a little out of order. So I took my last class. Even though I went to U of I took my last graduating class at Oregon State. And after that, I moved to Portland, where I was working at OHSU as a research assistant. And I like research. I mean, I don't love research, I like it. And that's what kind of changed that's what also influenced my idea of, do I want to get do I want to go, get a PhD, or do I want to be a sole physician? After 10 months, I kind of left the research world because it wasn't conducive to my type of personality. I was in the lab working by myself, isolated. I've gone through so many podcasts. It's not even funny. Like Hidden Brain Radio, I can give you all of that stuff. So after that, I went to Peru for 5 weeks. And after I came back, I realized I want to do some nonprofit work. And so that's when I got into social work before I got into med school.
So how did that inform this decision? Because again, there's a variety of ways that you could go into the world of medicine, but we have such a particular path at our university, and going in, and it comes back to that human connection of serving rural and underserved communities being our mission. And there's that real humanity to it that I think a lot of people lose when they think about a doctor, or they think about medicine, and they think about all the things that come along with, the work, or the course loads, or the specifics. And was it that work that you did with nonprofits that sort of led you in this direction?
I've always known that I wanted to go into medicine, and I wasn't driven by the money. I was driven by my passion to serve others in whatever capacity that may be. And I actually did my med school applications while I was in Peru. So even before getting into social work, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I felt like I was a low stat applicant, and that was my perspective.
So you are in your first year of med school now, almost at the end of it. You have one more week to go?
1 more week, 5 more exams.
5 exams, 1 week. That's one way to kick it off. Man, that's how they send you off, 5 exams.
Yeah, they say here's 5 exams, and have a great summer.
Wow.
And then make sure you do some work over the summer, and then come back, and you're just gonna get into the kidneys.
I hear the kidneys are fun.
I've heard mixed reviews. I heard they're one of the hardest systems.
Yeah, fun was there was a bit of sarcasm there. I've heard a lot of people say the kidneys are really, really complicated.
Yeah.
So there's something else to look forward to on top of the 5 exams. So what's the first year been like? Has it been something that lived up to your expectations? Did you have expectations coming in?
Wow. I thought that first year, I didn't think it was going to be so much just back to back, just bounce. It makes it really hard when you have like things happening outside of school life affecting you. You kind of have to just get back onto the train tracks and just continue forth. I mean, it's med school. It's like one of the highest caliber of educations, and just have to remain focused at all times. It's kind of a marathon that never ends. The only time I feel like I have time for myself is certain days on the weekends.
Is there some sort of you sound like you're a person that follows a pretty ritualistic pattern. So you kind of have the schedule that you work out to make sure that you're able to succeed in all the things that you do.
Yeah.
Do you have some sort of a daily schedule that you follow when you're in med school, or is it just sort of, let's see what happens?
Well, waking up is the hardest part to any day, no matter how many exams I have. I've tried waking up at 3, waking up at 4, 5, 6. It is super, super difficult. And some people are morning people, some people are night people. Unfortunately, I'm more like in the middle of the day kind of person. So my nightly routine is, we have school from 8 to 5. And one thing that I equate one med school day is 2.5 normal days. Because 8 to 12, you have 1 day. And then 12 to 5, 1 to 5, you have the second day. And then after that, you have half a day to kind of do review and work out. And by the end of the day, you realize, what did I do this morning? What that was today. And so it feels like what you did this morning was yesterday, and it kind of messes with you a little bit.
I would imagine.
So, even though with that equation, you would think that time would move super slowly, but I felt like I started med school maybe 2 months ago. It's wild to think that it's coming, this quickly to an end, and the first year.
Yeah, it's an accomplishment. I obviously don't have firsthand personal experience with it, but the closest experience I have is just talking to students like you, and every student that I've seen. It's starting in August and it goes all the way through next week, obviously, with those 5 exams, where it seems like every day everybody's like, oh.
There's this thing, you hear it like it's like a fire hose with the water thing. I have a different analogy. It's like, let's say you're swimming in the ocean and you're treading the water and you see this huge wave, which is a whole bunch of information. Let's say the ocean is like med school, and the wave that's coming is the new content that you're about to like just take on, and you have no idea what that content includes, and it hits you all in the face, and you're just tumulted underwater, and you're trying to swim up to the surface, and then you get to the surface, you get one breath of air, and then as soon as you take that breath of air, you get another wave. And so each successive wave and each successive drowning moment, you're swimming faster, and that's what changes. You're able to swim faster and get to the surface and breathe a little bit more. So it's just like, get better at it. Yeah, you start off super stressed, but then you're like, okay, I know what to expect. So you just become a better swimmer. Yeah,
it's sort of like those experiences that we talked about, good or bad. It's like creating a callus a bit, where you get a little bit stronger and you get a little bit faster, and things become a little bit more predictable in there.
But you never get used to it,
Yeah,
the water is still super cold, and you still get water up your nose, and
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, that's a perfect analogy for it. It sounds, especially from speaking to students around campus, it sounds like they're a lot of times rolling in the barrel of those waves.
Right.
But so now coming towards the end of it, what an accomplishment. I mean, for even just a single year of med school, for it to go by as fast as it did, but to take in as much information as you did, what does it feel like now looking back on all the months that felt like such a short amount of time?
I feel like, and I'm going to say this, I feel like I don't know much. I feel like I have no idea what I would be doing if someone were to present me with something, because I haven't had that actual experience. I know what it looks like in text. Like if you give me certain words, I know what to look for. But in a person, it's all ambiguous. It could be so many things, and I'm not confident yet. And that's something that I need to work on. Just telling myself that no matter, I've had so much knowledge, but I need to be confident in what I know. And having that is going to help me understand what I'm dealing with, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. That's how the curriculum works for the first two. I know the first year for sure. The second year, I believe, is sort of the same way, right? Where most of the things that you're learning out of a book, and it's text-based. And then all of a sudden it's translated into real life, and you hope that it clicks in.
Absolutely. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I'm sure that it will. It sounds like you've done plenty of the legwork to just get those strong swimming legs for when you're actually out at sea, So another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and this comes back to the beginning of our conversation, was music's role in this whole process. Because midway through the year, it was just a couple months ago now, right? You released a mixtape.
I did. Yeah. March 28th. It's because it's 6 months away from my birthday.
Okay.
And so it just happened to fall on that day. And I've always wanted to kind of have some, artists paint and they create these extravagant works of art, and they put it on their walls. And I wanted to have something like that for myself, because I make hip hop music, and I've never really been able to do that. First of all, because I don't know how to mix music, and I just know how to perform. And so it took me a long time to kind of figure out how to do that, the technical aspects. And so it was basically a journey of my med school career so far. That's my emotional journey in this mixtape. That's why I called it Cardiology.
Yeah, when you explained the title to me when we were getting on the bus from the Capitol building, that was something that connected with me. And I was like, what an interesting way to take the med school experience, all the stresses of it and all the things that you've undergone, and to channel those things into something completely different. It was unexpected. I mean, when I heard that you were doing a mixtape, I think my first reaction to you was like, what? Like, just sort of shocked by it. But Is it that process of taking all these experiences and all these emotions and channeling them, and what's the benefit of doing something like
So
that?
I was going through a really, really hard time when school started. You know, you've had this, I was thrown in a new environment. Starting off school, we just had lecture. And I don't know how personal you want me to get, but I was going through a big breakup. And, my partner at the time was going to the Peace Corps. And so the decision was made that, med school, I'm going my own way and she's going her own way. And it was just, bad timing. So 3 years of dating, and I was left to kind of navigate med school, navigate my emotions, the curricula. I felt super alone and isolated. And instead of harboring all of these emotions inside, I had to put it down on paper. And I realized that it wasn't putting it down on paper that made me feel a little better. It was constantly reciting it to make sure that it sounded perfect for the song that I was creating. And just constantly saying out again and again and again. The repetition made it feel like I was able to hold this one negative emotion in basically a digital format, like a tube, and to say, yes, I have control over this, and it doesn't have control over me. And so that's how I kind of looked at it. And that was the benefit.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. It sounds like something that could be translated, whether or not somebody has an interest in music or art or whatever the case may be. Being able to go through the stresses of an experience like going to med school and all the challenges that come along with it, but to be able to take, life isn't going to stop in that process. And I think that looking at it from the outside in, you could see med school as something that's extremely stressful on its own. With, you could have an ideal world outside of the walls of the school, and still it's going to be really hard. But the reality is life isn't going to stop on the outside. So being able to take the experiences that you're having in life and to turn those into something that's positive for yourself is, I imagine, a really, really important thing to be able to do for everybody who's going through the experience that you're going through. Yeah.
I mean, I've never been able to write hold a diary. Sorry, not hold a diary, but like write in diary consistently. And so this whole mixtape was like my diary, and that's how I kind of coped. So it was all there. I still listen to it, when I feel, since it's got various emotions in it, kind of helps me realize, okay, you have felt this way and you have bounced back from it. And I think that's kind of super important for us to tell ourselves that you have felt this way before and you can move on. You got to go on to the next one. And that's how it has to be, even though the downside is that you don't have much time to process emotions. You can feel things and then they all get bottled up inside. And that's the hard part, because if we let it consume us, then we don't perform as well.
Yeah, and you're forced to perform constantly. Yeah. So not to make it all sound like it's a challenge, obviously there are benefits to going to medical school, not only in the end of becoming a doctor and being able to live out your dream, but there must be day-to-day things that make this experience worthwhile and that make you keep going. Can you highlight any of those?
The experiences that make it seem worthwhile. I mean, I'd say maybe like a tertiary experience is, doing well in courses, because that, okay, this is where, you've put in the time and effort and you've done well. The other two experiences that kind of make it seem super worthwhile is the second one, I'd say, is when we have standardized patients. We are able to really take the conversation where we want it to be. And even though it's a mock patient, we have control over the room. We have control over how we're going to deal with this patient. And the best experience I've noticed is when we go to the Union Gospel Mission and we are the physician at that moment. These are patients we have no idea, what their history is, and we're collecting it, and we're trying to figure out based on what we've learned. And for me, I think that, okay, what I've learned so far in my first year is so limited, but coming into the room and seeing the patient, going through the physical exam, it just comes to you, it just clicks. And you walk out feeling like, wow, I kind of do know some stuff, and I want to continue it. And that constant repetition and exploration of what treatments we can do for these differentials, and that's what makes it worthwhile. Knowing that there is more to work towards, but it's a very good feeling.
We did a podcast a while ago with another group of students, and we sort of labeled it as like an experience that pre-med students could listen to get a sense of what it is like to go to med school through the application process, through the first year. I think we had a third-year student on there who was able to talk about that experience as well. The reality, again, is that while your experience is obviously unique and really challenging, you're surrounded by about 139 other students who are going through this also extremely challenging part of their lives, which is wildly unfamiliar to all of them, no matter what their backgrounds are. Has that been a benefit? Or
there are some students that I've talked to, and their stories are amazing. And it doesn't undermine my story or their stories. It just kind of solidifies the idea that we were chosen. So, I'm super grateful and proud that I'm at this school, and I can't see myself at another school. And so because of that pride that I have taken in being here, and the people, the interviewers who have selected me, that is the same threshold has been set for these other students. And they're here for a reason, for a purpose that is akin to mine.
just the experience of the other students around you. And I think that
Right.
one benefit that you have too is that you have the perspective of having the boarding school experience or things like that, where you've had challenges in your past and you've done it in the music that you've created, where you can compartmentalize those emotions and look back on them and say, I've gone through this, I was able to go through it, and I'm a better person because of it now. Has that been a benefit to being around the students? I imagine that your experiences alone are a benefit to the students that you're around, and just speaking with them and saying, hey, we're going through this together.
Right. From my experiences when I was younger, like, I've faced a lot of adversity, emotional adversity, and financial adversity and whatnot, cultural adversity. So it's like I've been through a lot of, been through the worst of it, and this is just another assessment. It's like an inception of assessments. So we're getting tested in so many ways, and I think that's the maddening beauty of it all, of med school. Like, I thought the MCAT was diabolically just genius, because they changed it to a 7-hour test, and they're really testing you to see if you, first of all, do you know the information? Second of all, can you really focus on one thing? Make sure you don't give up, because we really have to make sure that we're not going to give up on any patient in the future because we find it so difficult or find it so hard. Like, that's not the kind of person that they want. They want to have a person who is going to basically never give up. And that does sound cliche, but that's the truth.
So in being able to overcome that adversity and to get to the point where you are now, where you're finishing your first year of medical school, what do you credit that to? I know that the experiences that you've had have helped you get to this point, but it sounds like when you deal with a challenge every single day, but you can reflect on the other challenges that you've faced.
Yeah.
There's a benefit to that. And even though it doesn't seem beneficial at the time when you're struggling, as we said, there's benefit to being able to have the perspective that struggle is okay.
So what kind of keeps me going?
Mm-hmm.
I can't see myself doing any other thing as important or as gratifying as this. Like, this is my calling. In a way, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And even if I wasn't getting paid, just being able to be there for people and educate them and treat them, and if that's how I can make the world a better place, then that's what I'm gonna do. And my integrity really guides me, and that's something that I hold on for dear life. And
what an important characteristic to bring into the medical world.
And we have to hold on to that, because things are changing. We might find shortcuts. There may be shortcuts, and we have to, morality, integrity, like, that has to be, we've taken an oath. We have to kind of uphold that.
What I really enjoy about having conversations with students like you is, even when I first came here and got this job, I never was a medical student. I hadn't gone to medical school. And I think that there's sort of this public perception of the idea of a medical student that's kind of cut and dry, that they're the highest in their class in high school, that they're extremely successful through college, and that's what allows them to get into medical school. And of course, they're going to be a doctor because they're always the smartest person in the room and that sort of thing. But to see that there's adversity that ends up building up somebody to the point where they can take care of somebody else in a way that they can relate to them is really important. For people who may be listening to this who aren't in medical school now and might be looking at a medical school as some sort of a far off dream because I'm not the top of my high school class, or I'm not doing great in my college courses, I'm struggling in organic chemistry, or whatever the case may be. Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was high school, I kind of dwindled off because of calculus and whatnot, but my GPA was like, within normal range. It was fine. It was enough to get into college. First of all, it doesn't matter where you go for college, as long as there's like a good pre-med program where you're able to take everything you need for the MCAT. And my stats in college were very low. And, my GPA was 3.1 and my MCAT score was a 501. So I was 1 point above average on the MCAT and relatively below average with my GPA. And I was terrified. I was thinking to myself, this is all I've ever wanted, is to get into med school. That's been the dream. And it wasn't something that I was thinking about, hey, I can get into it. I was very scared and apprehensive and even applying because I didn't know if it was going to be a reality. But I had to try. So my advice is that just don't give up. Because if you don't try, you're giving up on yourself. Well, I used to do cross country back in middle school and high school, and my coach used to say, okay, we're gonna run 3 miles today, and she used to just sit on the side and just observe us, and sometimes she didn't pay attention, and some of us ran 3 miles, some of us ran 2 miles. At the end of the day, she said, hey, I noticed that you didn't run the full miles, but I'm not upset about it. Just know that if you're not running 3 miles or the amounts that you're supposed to, then you're just cheating yourself. And we do this for ourselves initially. We want this dream for ourselves. And I couldn't disappoint myself, because at the end of the day, I am my own person. It means a lot to me to be able to do what I want for others. But a lot of the things that kind of got me into med school were my extracurriculars, my research experience, just being genuine with people, having a conversation, connecting with them. I think connecting with someone really catalyzes the process of that trust. And patients want to be seen as patients, not profits. And I think that's what really kind of separates the super, super high achievers from, not, like people like me who have doubts, but still have that passion.
Another note that I wanted to bring up, and this might seem like a strange one, but it's not a lifestyle that I have. But it seems to me from an outside perspective that it would be something that would be hard to maintain through medical school, which I think most things seem to be hard to maintain through medical school. But you are a vegan, correct?
Yeah. I've been vegan for past 3.5 years. And I've been vegetarian since I say that I'm a fetal vegetarian. My mom and dad were both vegetarians.
Wow.
So I grew up vegetarian, and then 3.5 years ago, I became vegan.
Wow. So being in med school again with those time constraints and those challenges, has that been a challenge to maintain that? Because I imagine it's a lot easier to go out and get something quick, but it wouldn't match up with what you need.
Totally not. And you have no idea how many times I've been tempted with Domino's pizza when it comes into the on campus. Like, that is the only food that comes on campus, and super, super just appetizing. All the goodies, but that's what kind of keeps me away. My whole idea for being vegan is it started off as hey, I gotta eat healthy, gotta protect the environment. But veganism is more of a lifestyle now for me. Like, I become more conscientious about what kind of who I support, what businesses I support. Are they local? Are they basically come back to the missions, supporting underserved and underrepresented communities and peoples and organizations. I'd rather support the underdogs of our community than the corporate giants. And so that is fueled by my integrity as well. But yes, there are some places in Yakima where I can go get vegan options, but most of the time I meal prep.
What's it been like? Had you had an experience with a place like Yakima before moving here?
No, I really haven't. Normally, Portland and Eugene has always had very accessible vegan options, and I think I've saved money a little bit on eating out here. So I haven't found a place like Yakima.
Yeah. So what's it been like? This is another one for students who may be coming here. Your first experience in your first year here and living in a place that's, I mean, there's no denying that it's different than the places that you've been. How have you adjusted to that? And has it been a challenge, and have there been benefits or, shortfalls to this?
Yeah. So Yakima is super, super small. And I honestly haven't experienced the extent of what Yakima really entails, because I feel like I'm in my own little liberal pocket bubble with the school and apartments and gym and grocery store and the breweries. So that's pretty much it. Diversity is a little lacking. The people our age, like there's not that many. I've kind of gotten an idea of what kind of place I want to end up in, kind of in the middle of Yakima and middle of Portland, like between the demographics and the population of Portland and Yakima. But I have so much faith that Yakima is exponentially growing, and it's going to become a great town, in the next 10 years by the time I'm done with residency and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that having 140 unique people like you coming into town every year is starting this new medical process is a major part of that. I say that to people around here all the time, that what other place brings in 140 unique, very different personalities to town, and they all have this one mission, and that mission is something that's really a benefit to the community, no matter what community that ends up being in.
Yeah, and it's definitely putting Yakima on the map. I mean, we're going to expand our school to multiple professions, and it's got nowhere to go but up.
So you're just finishing your first year of school, going into your second year. Have you been speaking to second years, and do you have any expectations going into that now that you've kind of got this is the reality of this experience?
Wow. I should be doing that, but because I'm thinking about, one day at a time, I feel like maybe over the summer I might reach out to them and ask them, how is it that I should navigate the second year? Most of the second years that I've asked, hey, what should I do over the summer? Because we're such high achievers. We want to be able to do research. We want to work. We want to, do something humanitarian over the summer. But the most of what I've heard is just make sure that this summer is yours and that you're doing what you want to do with the summer, because this may be one of your last summers where you can truly be free. And after that, you're constrained to a lot of the obligations of what you'll have to face.
So this summer, before we started the recording process, you told me some of your plans. What is it that you're doing this summer? Because that was something that kind of caught my attention right away.
So I'll be doing a medical mission trip in Surin, Thailand with another friend of mine. And I'll be doing that for a month, where we'll be going to, the rural healthcare clinics over there and basically doing vital stats and collecting vitals and doing a first aid experience, getting a understanding of how their healthcare works. And maybe that'll spark some global health interest in me, and I've been considering Doctors Without Borders or something like that. Something, go someplace where no other doctors have gone before. That's like their motto. And I think a part of me wants to do something like that. And then after that, I'll be going to a couple of parts of Europe for a couple of weeks.
Nice.
Just to get all my traveling done in one swoop, and then come back to Yakima, and maybe do a couple shows here and there.
Yeah, it sounds like a good way to get the most out of your experience. Your summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So now that you're going into your second year, you begin, of course, with this process of approaching third and fourth year, and then eventually graduation, which I'm sure with the speed and the
Oh my gosh, it's going to come by so quickly.
So do you have plans for, you mentioned going into potentially neurosurgery, or at least your fascination with that. Is that a field that you're still trying to aim towards, or what are your aspirations for this whole medical experience?
So neurosurgery is definitely out of the question now, because I've taken more into consideration of what kind of lifestyle I want to embody. I think that was a really good catalyst for my passion, but I really, really admired the osteopathic philosophy, and OMT, I think, is a very beneficial tool, something that is overlooked nowadays, and it's growing. And so I want to be able to include that in my practice. Family medicine is there, and it's, I've been the kind of person where I want to know a little bit about everything, and also everything about something. So with family medicine, I can cover a whole spectrum of things. Cardiology has always been one of my fascinations, and most of what I'm thinking is that I will decide after rotations, because until I really experience it for a good solid month, I won't really know if I really love it. I have an idea, but I don't know.
Good luck.
One day at a time. That's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah. That's a good strategy. It's a good approach, especially for somebody who's as long seeing as you seem to be. It's funny to come into a medical school experience with that sort of drive of what's the next step? What am I going to do next? And then all of a sudden to realize, if I focus on the next thing, I'm going to lose track of this thing. Absolutely.
One of my good friends told me that, it's like you have a certain amount of pancakes that you have to eat every day. You get maybe, let's say, 5 pancakes, and you should finish those 5 pancakes by the end of the day, because the next day you're getting 5 more, and slowly they're just going to stack on top of each other. And by this point, I feel like right now I have like 20 pancakes stacked on my table, and I'm not that hungry, but I got to finish them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're pretty hungry to me. It sounds like you have plenty of an appetite left. So
I hope so. Let's do it.
Yeah. As I say, but I always mean it, because the students that we get here are so unique, and you're a perfect example of that. And it's such a pleasure to see, coming from a place where before I came here, I had that perspective of this is what a medical student must be, and this is where they must come from, and this is what they must act like, and this is sort of the lifestyle that they must lead, to hear perspectives like yours, and to see the experiences that have led you here and how they've informed the way that you tolerate the challenges that you face and how you overcome those challenges. It's really an exciting thing. And it's great to look forward to people like you being in the healthcare field and taking those perspectives forward with you. So thanks so much for coming on and for sitting down with us. And I really appreciate it. And
thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm excited to get this out there and to show people that there isn't just one path, and that there isn't just one way to get to medical school, and that there are challenges, but those challenges aren't, despite being unique, they're not necessarily unique to your one experience, and that there are others there with you.
Absolutely. Totally agree.